Good afternoon, everyone. To begin with, the first session today, this afternoon, is going to be a conversation featuring Manu and Andrei Kukrov. It's about writing in the time of uncertainty. And before I invite my guests, I would like to introduce our guest, Andrei Kukrov. He is a celebrated Ukrainian novelist, journalist, and screenwriter, best known for his satirical and surreal narratives that delve into the human condition and socio-political landscapes. Kukrov gained international recognition with Death and the Penguin in 1996, a darkly comic tale about post-Soviet Ukraine featuring a struggling writer and his pet penguin. His works, translated into over 30 languages, often mix humor, absurdity, and sharp observations of post-Soviet realities. A vocal advocate for Ukraine, Kukrov has written extensively about the country's culture and political struggles, particularly during the Russo-Ukrainian conflict. His books, including Grey Maize, 2018, continue to captivate readers with their wit, humanity, and unique perspective on life in a turbulent region. With that, I invite Mr. Kukrov to be on the dais, and also invite our festival director, Mr. Manu sir, to join us and begin this conversation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Andrei Kukrov was introduced by one of my curators, Pramudit Dhananja, but unfortunately, I just got a voicemail. Pramudit is stuck in Chennai airport and he has been asked to go back to Sri Lanka. I have sent a message. If possible, he can have another ticket from another Boeing, Air India, etc., so that I will bear all the costs. There is so that we can make the arrangement. But I do not, since he is not able, I am not able to contact him, so nothing can be told final. However, if you Google the name of Andrei Kukrov, you will see that he is one of the celebrated authors of Ukraine. And Ukraine is a word used since last 3 years all over the world. I think the most used word in the world is called Ukraine. They have suffered. War is still going on. And like Kashmir, like our northeast region, it is a place for a disturbance. Few years ago also Sri Lanka faced that civil war for almost 20 years. I just would like to know from Kukrov that is the disturbance the womb of creativity? Because once the disturbance is there, the first victim are its own people. And being a writer, you are concerned with the people's socio-economical and cultural situation. Kindly explain to us, enlighten to us. Besides that, you can tell the brief history of Ukrainian literature of Ukraine, so that we will have some better idea about what is going on there.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. I think I'm probably the first Ukrainian writer who came to Odisha. And I don't think we ever had a writer from Odisha coming to Ukraine.
I have a friend, I met him in 2008 in Kerala. He stays in USA. I have forgotten his name, but he's still a friend. He's a Ukrainian poet.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
But anyway, we should know more about each other's literatures. And I hope that one day, hopefully soon, the poetry or dear poetry will be translated into Ukrainian. It would be very, very good. Yes. Ukrainian literature is written actually mostly in Ukrainian language, but the first book which was wrote in 15th century by Ukrainian intellectual Yurko Kotormak was written in Latin and published in Rome, because he was president of Bologna University and he wrote his works in Latin. The next generation of Ukrainian intellectuals and writers wrote in Polish, because Ukrainian territory was part of Polish kingdom for a long time. And it's only from 17th, 18th century the Ukrainian language actually became the language of intellectuals, but they were writing books in Ukrainian not for their readers, because the readers didn't exist. They were saving the language by writing books. So actually these books were read much later. And of course, I mean, a lot of books by Ukrainian writers were written also in Russian language during Russian Empire. Mykola Gogol, or Nikolai Gogol, whom you know, he is a typical Ukrainian writer who brought humor into Russian literature. Because from my point of view, personal point of view, there is a difference between Russian and Ukrainian literature. Russian literature, classical literature, has a tendency to be more satirical, and Ukrainian has a tendency to use humor more than satire. When the war started, I was in Kyiv with my wife. We were woken up by the explosions outside our windows. We live in the historical center of Kyiv. Kyiv is 1,540 years old, and next to our apartment we have Saint Sophia Cathedral from 11th century. So probably this is the secret why our block of flats is still not damaged. But when the war started, all the bookshops closed down, all the libraries, all the theaters, and for 2 months in the beginning of full-scale invasion, there was no cultural life at all. Many people from culture went abroad as refugees. Others moved from Kyiv to Lviv to western Ukraine, away from the front lines. And it was only 2.5 months later that the first book discussions were restarted in the bomb shelters and in the underground metro stations. So, I mean, in the same period, print works, the printing factories which were printing books were destroyed, and only small printing works were working in central Ukraine and western Ukraine. And we had another phenomena that most of the novelists in Ukraine stopped writing novels. It's very difficult to write fiction during the war. Everybody started writing non-fiction, diaries, essays, because everybody understood that now every writer is a witness of the historical events and they should be written down. So in the first year of the full-scale invasion, the favorite genre of readers in Ukraine became non-fiction. Non-fiction about history of Ukraine, about the war. Many of these books were written by soldiers, and actually because of the war we have now two literatures: professional literature written by professional writers, and literature, books written by volunteers, by soldiers, by military people who never wrote before, and they started writing only because of the war. At some point we had 200 or 300 books written by soldiers and volunteers in the bookshops. Now it's less, of course.
Can I just intervene, Kukrov? Have you experienced yourself war?
Well, we became, with my wife and children, displaced persons. We moved to Western Ukraine for 4 months. Then me and my wife, we became, for 2 months, refugees in France. And then we came back to Kyiv. And now all family is in Kyiv. We live in Kyiv. But if you live in Kyiv or in big city, you never sleep. It's already 14 months. Every night there are sirens and explosions. So actually, this is the reality. In the morning, people, drink a lot of coffee and go to work. In the daytime, life looks normal until 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening, and then new drones, new missiles, new sirens.
How it has influenced your writing, this experience?
Well, I mean, instead of novels, I wrote 3 books of diaries about life during the war. This is our daily war. This is the first one, Diary of Invasion. These books are published in London. 3 Years of On Fire was published 3 weeks ago. And actually, because of the war, I started writing diaries in English on demand of my English publisher.
Why I asked this question, because let me tell you in a lighter vein. One novel is called The Red Badge of Courage, written by Stephen Crane. That is perhaps one of the most well-known war novel in the world. But Stephen has never seen any war, never experienced, never gone to the battlefield. But it was one of the best novels during that year. On the other hand, when there was a war during that time, the general himself wrote one novel, but nobody read it. So what I am telling that what is the beauty of fictionalizing the war situation? You see, writer is nothing but the bundle of imaginations. You can foresee from here sitting that how war might be going, but maybe it is not the reality. That is how as a writer you perceive.
Well, thank you very much for a very good question. First of all, every person changes immediately when the war starts. When we were living in our apartment in Kiev, I didn't take with me a single book. And my wife took Bible. And I realized actually when we were driving to the West that material world doesn't make any sense for me anymore. And I as a child, I was collecting stamps, coins, and antique books. So I loved old material things. And everything was left behind. And I was not sure whether we come back or not, or will the apartment be destroyed or not. Another thing is that it's impossible to write fiction when you hear sirens and explosions, because fiction requires concentration. You should detach yourself from reality in order to invent a story. And here you have hundreds, if not thousands and millions of real-life dramas and horrible things happening in front of your eyes, and you become a literary photographer. You write truth. You write what you see, and you cannot stop, because you feel responsible to be honest about each moment of reality that you describe in your essays or in your diary. If in first 2 volumes of these 3 books, I was describing sad adventures of our friends Valentin and Tatiana. I will not tell you this, it's a long story, but what happened that they managed to become refugees in Germany, and then I visited them twice, and then Valentin, her husband, died. He was cremated in Germany. She was trying to get back to Kiev to bury him in the cemetery next to his relatives, and she had to cancel the first trip because Kiev was bombarded very heavily. In the end, actually, she came to Kiev. She buried the ashes of her husband, and in 2 days later she died. And I mean,
Sorry.
yeah, but I mean, it's not only. This is a sad story, but the other sad story is that people, not military people, civil people, with problems with health, now they don't want to go to doctors, to clinics. They think that doctors should treat soldiers, wounded soldiers and officers, not civilians. So actually, practically civilian people, many, especially older, they make their life shorter, not addressing the doctors. just forgetting about themselves.
Okay. You see, you share the language, the culture, and the social milieu with Russians, who were once of a part of, you both were part of one country. Now you are divided. And I hope there must not be, culturally, there was a very high difference, must not be there. What is the first Ukrainian short story written in your language? Do you write in Russian or your native languages?
My mother tongue is Russian.
Yeah.
I'm a so-called Russian speaker, but I speak Ukrainian without accent, and I was working as an editor of the translations of foreign novels into Ukrainian in the Soviet times. So I'm also bilingual, but I speak more languages than 2 and 3. Yes, there are still actually Russian language writers in Ukraine, but because Russian language became the language of the enemy, so these writers are not part of the contemporary literary context. So they are not noticed, they are ignored, and they don't want to be noticed. Because now actually, when the war started, I felt myself shame speaking Russian in the street. But lots of people speak Russian in Odessa, in Kyiv, in Kharkiv, and there are no problems on the street. But in cultural sphere, in public political sphere, if you speak publicly Russian, some people understand that this is the way you support Putin, who says that he came to Ukraine to defend Russian speakers.
The same thing I experienced last year when I was in Assam for a literature festival. I talked to somebody in Bengali, thinking that they will like it, but later I came to know they don't see eye to each other. So it happens with the neighboring states or countries, perhaps.
Well, what happens that during the conflicts like this, during the wars like this, people forget that language is an instrument of culture, of politics, but it is not a content.
It carries its legacy, it is a history and a culture of any language.
Yes.
That's why I have always advocated that no language is bad on the earth. Every language has its importance, and it should be honored. It is not that my language is only best and others' languages are not the best. It should not be like that.
But in political history, languages suffer just like people. And I remember that when I was 11 years old, it was 1972, in the school I was asked what foreign language I want to learn in the school, English or German. And I told the teacher I will never learn German because Germans killed my grandfather in the Second World War. I learned German when I was 37 because my Swiss German publisher asked me to learn German to present my books to German-speaking audience. So actually, you need time. Every time you need 20, 30, 40 years when the situation in one place stabilizes, in other place destabilizes, and the other language is carrying the guilt of the historical evil.
The same thing was told by Nani Palkiwala, one of the celebrated advocate of the country, India, that someone's in two countries, if somebody is one of the savior of the country, he is the enemy of another country. One is martyr, another is savior.
Yeah.
So religion also plays all spoil ports in that region. But my question was really, I just missed to ask you, what is the name of the first short story written in Ukrainian language and when? First short story. Good. Short story, do you understand?
No.
Story, not fiction, not very long story.
Like epic story.
No, it is not an epic story.
But like Bhagavad Gita.
Short fiction I am talking. Short fiction.
Science fiction.
Not science, short. S-H-O-R-T, short.
Yes.
minute, short form of the novel.
Yeah.
You have many fiction. For example, many fictions are there. Maxim Gorky has written many short fiction.
Ah, okay. Well, I mean,
Who has written that Death of a Clerk? Anton Chekhov has many short stories written in Russian language. Anton Chekhov itself is
yes.
there.
Well, short stories,
Yeah.
if we talk about short stories,
Oh, yeah.
the most famous probably short story author is...
Not famous, fast. I'm talking about, please,
Fast?
fast. Who was the first short story, which was known as the first short story written, and in which year, if you remember?
Well, I know the author. I mean, he
You
died
see,
in
let me
19...
tell you, please tell.
No, the problem is that actually Ukrainian literature was very little translated, and classical Ukrainian literature until this war was not translated at all. Even publishers...
I am not asking about the translation, I am talking about the original, in original language, not translation. You see, in Odisha, we write in Odia language.
Yes.
And we have a short story written in 1898 by one of the father of Oriya literature called Fakir Mohan Senapati. Likewise,
Okay.
who is the first short story writer and what was the first story written in Ukraine?
Well, I love novels, so I can talk about novels.
Okay. What is the first novel written in Ukraine?
I think it is the beginning of 19th century, beginning and middle. So there was Ivan Kotlarevsky who wrote some kind of literary, not parody, but almost parody on ancient Greeks.
Now let us talk about the Russian literature versus Ukrainian literature.
No, this is Ukrainian. I'm talking about Ukrainian literature. Yeah. So Ivan Kotlarevsky, but probably before him, the best philosopher in Ukraine who was in his head Buddhist, but he didn't know about this, Grigory Skovoroda. It is 18th century.
Then what you want, what is the status of in today's contemporary young writers in Ukraine? Are they writing about only this present situation, that war situation? Or,
Well, in wartime, everything changes very quickly. So, I mean, we had 1 year of non-fiction written by everybody and read by everybody, and then suddenly poetry became much more important on the front line because the soldiers wanted to go to meet poets, and poets were coming to front lines to recite their poems to soldiers and officers, and these were young poets, and they are still going actually to the deoccupied territories and to the towns not far away from the front. Now, majority of readers are reading translated love novels and crime stories from other literatures because they want to escape from the war. Almost 4 years of the war, you don't want to read about the war when you hear sirens. So they are trying to find something not connected with the reality. And the writers who wrote and who are still writing science fiction and fantasy, they are very popular also. So away from reality, this is the phase now.
are they reading, the young poets are reading poems in front of soldiers
Yes.
to boost their moral?
It's not a question of to boost moral, because I went also a couple of times with poets and I saw the soldiers were crying when they were listening to the poems. Poems are charging you with emotional energy. The poems that were read when I was at the meeting, they were not patriotic especially, or they were not very social or political. It was about home, parents, mother, your favorite dog, your children, etc. So, it was about family. And of course, the soldiers were all touched because they were thinking while listening poetry about their families and about their home and about their childhood, etc. And I think this was very important, like art therapy. So, I mean, they were not motivated. They were relaxed, and actually sometimes on the front line, it's better to be relaxed than to be motivated, because if you are motivated without rest, you are exhausted, and you cannot neither defend the territory nor survive.
Okay. You have been, you must have been into writing since last 40 years, if I'm not wrong. You must have seen the evolving the writers and the society and the people are evolving. Do you find any difference what happened 40 years ago and today in the your Ukrainian literature?
Well, of course, I can. Yes, in the Soviet, I started writing in the Soviet time. I started writing first poems, and then short stories, and then novels. And I couldn't publish my neither novels nor short stories until end of 80s. Only when Gorbachev became the general secretary, the censorship was slightly relaxed, and I had my first book published before the collapse of the Soviet Union. And then actually, but when my books were not published, my manuscripts were shared and copied by people who liked them. So there was illegal circulation of novels, of short stories, etc. And literature was very important for people in the late Soviet time, because everybody expected to find truth in the literature. After 1991, literature was entertaining people, and sometimes writers were trying to write social novels, political novels, and they were not very well received. Now political novels are more important than before because of the war situation.
Well, my next question is, have you ever criticized your government in your writings?
Always. I mean, but not only my government and my politicians. I wrote in 2004 a novel which is in English called The President's Last Love. And one of the characters in this novel was Vladimir Putin, a Russian president. And he promised Ukrainian president in the book written in 2004 that he will annex Crimea. So this was my first book to be banned in Russia.
Okay.
But actually my books with a lot of criticism against Ukrainian politicians were never banned in Ukraine.
Why I asked this question, while asking this question, something was playing in the back of my mind. This Shehan Karunatilak, who could not unfortunately be here today, he has written one short story that asking to the government is not an criticizing the government is not an act of a treason. It is a act of it is act that you love your country. When you criticize, you don't because out of love you criticize. You want that it should fall into place.
You want it to be. You want mistakes to be corrected, crimes to be punished, and the situation to be improved. Everybody wants it, yes. But I mean, in fact, actually, writers in Ukraine were also writing books addressed to politicians. Politicians never read these books, but politicians read the articles of the journalists who were criticizing them. And so it was actually quite dangerous to be a journalist in Ukraine in 1990s and beginning of 2000 if you criticize politicians.
Kukrov, you were born Russian. Now you are a Ukrainian.
I was born in Russia. My parents were Russian.
My question is yet
yes.
to come.
Okay.
I just wanted to know, you are a born Russian, but now you are a Ukrainian.
Yes.
You feel proud of being a Russian or an Ukrainian?
No, I was born Russian, but I was a Soviet personality. I mean, in the Soviet Union, following the advice or dream of Lenin, a new people was created, Soviet people. They were Ukrainians, Russians, Uzbeks, but the mentality was not national. It was not connected with history of the national ethnic group, but it was actually political mentality and social Soviet. So I was for 30 years a Soviet man, young man, who was anti-Soviet, but still actually when the Soviet Union collapsed, I realized how many small Soviet things and ideas were still in my head. Yeah, so I mean, I was fond of Russian literature of 1920s when I was beginning to write. But because of the Russian-Ukrainian relationship, I lost interest to Russian culture. And what is interesting, in Ukraine, there were approximately up to 8 million ethnic Russians who became Ukrainians. And strangely enough, 80% of them also lost interest to Russian culture. But it doesn't mean that all of them became very interested in Western culture or in Ukrainian culture, but just culture stopped playing important social role in post-Soviet society because of the economical crisis that followed 1991. And then for people economical issues were more important than cultural issues. And when you are surviving, you forget about your cultural background, your cultural interests, because you want to feed your family. You forget who you are, in fact.
Before opening to the audience for questions, I have a last question for you. What advice you want to make to our youngsters, those who are writing here in Odisha, to become internationally reputed? Mind every word. They are writing, but how they should be internationally reputed and what should they do?
Well, I mean, every book, every short story, first of all, is a story. So, I mean, you should find a story that will be understood by everybody in the world, will be definitely from Odisha, and will be that the story is happening here in Odisha.
Yes.
Yes. And you want to share history of your people, of your state, of your language with the world. So you have to be passionate about this story. So because when you write, if you are not passionate, you have a dry text. And dry text doesn't attract much attention. So you should be really be burning with desire to tell the story from Odisha.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. With this note, we finish the session. And a big thank you, Mr. Kukrov, for being here on the 10th edition of OLF. And I was just taking the role of Pramodit D. Rupsinghe, my friend, who is now just returning to Colombo. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I want to give these 3 books to a wonderful person who is promoting Odisha literature all around the world. And I found out about Odisha literature from Facebook page of Manu many years ago.
I am honored.
Thank you, Mr. Kukrov and Manu Das sir, for that amazing session.